All right, let's take a look at this painting and see if I can get some good results. So what I have here is I have a Hobbit, Halfling, from RNE Studios, and you're going to see that I base coated it black. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to bring out a lot of that detail, but we're going to do it with tricks. So first brush I'm going to use is a rather well used 2 flat brush. This is my workhorse. I go through these more than probably any other brush, but you see that tip? It's a little more than 1/8 of an inch wide, and we're going to use it to apply this Mornfang Brown Citadel paint. So that's going to be our first coat, our first layer, and we're going to apply it not quite over the whole surface. So get us a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use kind of a dry brushing technique where we're just tracing down where the light would hit to run it across this model. And we're going to rough in some of these areas of black. I don't need to get the sword because that's not going to end up being brown anyway. And then with just a couple strokes, I have the basic details to where we can see them. Let's get his breeches here and his feet. And now you can already see more of that detail come out just because it's not all one flat color. And this will dry pretty quick. We're not doing a real heavy coat. I'm not going for award-winning quality here, but I do want to make sure I bring out some different flavors of what is on this model. So get him right there. He doesn't have boots, he has feet, so we're going to remember that that is flesh tone at the bottom. But so far, we've got our Samwise clone right here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, with a dirty brush, I'm going to lay out the next layer of our brown. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this lighter color. This is Xandri Dust, also from Citadel. And I'm going to cover things other than his big cloak. So we're going to hit his hair and other fleshy areas. We'll kind of rub into his hands. We'll get a little of his feet. And then I'm also going to do his clothing underneath his cloak. And we'll be able to come back and touch this up. But I want to put in and rough out these major sources of different colors. And with this light brush action, you'll probably see now how we can even start to see facial features. Our next step will be one more lighter color. And for this one, I'm going to use Khaki from Apple Barrel. This is a 50-cent pot of paint. There is nothing here that's that amazing. I have washed my brush out. So I'm going to put a little bit down here on my disposable palette. And you're going to see that, you know, what we're going for here. We're going darker to lighter. I can brush a little bit off here so that all I'm doing is hitting the most raised edges of my model. Hair I'll put a little more in because I want it to be a lighter color. But then for the face, for the hands, for the feet, I'm going to just lightly touch it with this brush so that it hits the raised areas of the model rather than going deep inside. So we'll start to see how that's working out here. I can also take this opportunity if I want to apply this lighter color to his bedroll back here. I can do that. And it doesn't have to stay this color. I just want it lighter than that dark brown of his cloak. And again, it's a real light, dry touch. I'll also hit his backpack down here with just a glancing touch so that I've got a little bit of that highlight. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to make these look like different leathers. So while I only have one coat on this brown cloak, it's going to end up having more color depth to it once I hit it with washes. But for now, this is what we're sitting with. The next thing we're going to do is black, but we don't actually use black. I'm going to take the metallic pieces like his pots here and his sword, and I'm going to make them ready to handle gunmetal. And for that, I use, again, it's apple barrel paints. Pavement is a wonderful dark, deep gray color. And the reason I don't do black for almost anything is that once you go black, you can't go back, or something like that. You can't make it darker, so you can't really shade black. So in this case, we're going to apply our pre-coat just to make sure I have a nice dark color on here. And I will do most of this with the side of my number 2 brush, and I will come through and clean this up later. But I'm really not, because my touch is so light here, I'm not really getting much off of where I want it to be. And so we can pick out pots, and we could pick out his ladle. And yes, if I were making this Samwise, I would have pulled up photo reference, and we would make sure that he had the green elven cloak and his white shirt and gray pants. But I'm not doing that. I'm just using this model to be a halfling. So I'm going to take some artistic license with it. That being said, I do want to go dark pants. So let's take a little more black, and we're going to get inside this model where he has his pants, and I will just hit this. I haven't needed to go to a really small brush yet. This is what we're doing with our number 2 flat, but this gives me enough control where I can get into those places that we want the dark to be. Now, going dark in the pants is going to allow me to bring that color up a lot through progressive shading. And I'm going to go with gray pants here, but they're going to end up being a darker gray. So that is where we're sitting right now. Next up, we're going to prepare to do our flesh tone. And I do this really simply. I don't spend a lot of time, and this miniature should look good from 2 feet away. I'm shooting for table quality, not award-winning quality. But there are a couple places here I still want to bring out a little more light. So I've got, this is an all ceramite white. I have mixed some apple barrel white with it just to have it diluted properly. And for this, I am going to use a smaller brush. I'm using a 10-0 liner on this one. And we're going to take a little bit of it, because this pot has been used over and over and over. I'll just draw it directly from here. Make sure we get our point. And with this, I'm going to, again, just highlight pieces of his face, his hands, and even his dirty hobbit feet. But we're not going to completely cover those browns we already have on there. We're just adding a little light to it. So we can differentiate between our different materials. And if you look, I've got a little bit spilled onto his hair, but that's okay. We're going to make our version of Sam a blonde, which means that you probably think I should lighten the hair up a bit. You know what? That's a really good suggestion. We're going to take another dry brush and just skim that over the top so we can leave some of that brown underneath. And so we have started to make the hair. So these successive layers just keep rising and rising until we get them where we want them. But little bits at a time help. And then I will clean this brush and change it, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that cloak. For the cloak, I'm back again with a small brush. This time we're going to go with a 1 round. And I'm going to use one of my favorite Citadel colors, which is Bugman's Glow. And this really was meant to be a base color for dwarven flesh, but I use it for leather, and I use it just as kind of a highlight section for leather seats, leather cloaks, leather packs, because it gives this nice fleshy tone. And if I put it right next to the brown, you'll see how it's just a little bit lighter, and it adds more warmth to it. So again, we're going to hit where the light is hitting. So we'll brush a little over the shoulder. Any of these folds are going to need to come out. And we're just picking out the places. Now, if my camera were better and you could see, you've actually got you've got the black from the base coat. You've got the brown from our first layer. And then you have this Bugman's Glow on top of it. And this is getting a very serious depth to the leathers. I'm going to pick out some of these places. And because we did that light dry brush to begin with, we can start to see some of these highlighted areas because they've already been highlighted from our dry brush. So I can just hit those and apply that. And that gives us our cloak color. And we don't have to get super artistic to have that cloak with those different layers intact. Next up, let's do these pants while we've got them. And again, apple barrel color. This is pewter. This is my step lighter than pavement. I go through this so much because I use this. This is my way to do black or to do any sort of dark. It starts with pavement and then we go up to pewter. And so I'll just find his pants, and just like we did on the cloak, I'm going to highlight the areas where the light is hitting. So I'm not even going to go all the way deep into his crotch here. First off, that would be invasive. But I don't need to, because that's really all I need to do to set that gray. I can look on the back and see if there's any packs or anything I want to use the same color for. But I really don't see much that I need to do that with. I kind of like the worn canvas look of his backpack. But you know what? Maybe we'll do gray for the bedroll, just so we have some manner of color separation. So I'll just apply this in here. And this is more of a purposeful brush. I am making sure that the paint gets there, but I don't necessarily have to run over the little baby straps that I can see. When we get to the side, we can do a little lighter so that that detail stays preserved. And at this point, my bedroll is separated from that canvas pack that he has. So we can definitely see the difference back there. Now, the one step above pewter is elephant gray, another 50-cent paint pot. So we were just going to do a teensy bit of elephant gray as our final highlight step on the pieces that we want gray. So we're thinking kneecap, rim of the pant, and then back here we're going to just do the top portions of our bedroll where light would probably hit. And at that point, that's all of the elephant gray that we need. We won't need any more for this entire model. But next time, we're going to look at skin tone. At this point, the real magic is going to happen, because we're going to take this face, these hands, and these feet, and we're going to make them look flesh-like with one more step. Now, again, this is not intended to be a studio award-winning model. We are going to use a small brush here. I have a 10-0 liner. And we're going to use an ink, or shade in this case, called Seraphim Sepia. This is talent in a bottle. Okay, so watch what we're going to do with this, and we're going to put it on a lot of things. So these shades, these inks, are very, very runny. You can see that running all over the place here. So I'm just going to set this down, and we're going to pull from the cap. Pull from the lid here. And I've got some Seraphim Sepia on my brush. We're just going to take this guy, and I am going to brush his face with this incredibly runny ink, and it is going to go into all the recesses that the digital artist has put into this model, such as the eyes, the mouth, under the nose, if we had ears visible. And that is going to make him look like he has a face. I have not painted an eyeball on a miniature this size in 30 years, and I do not plan to start anytime soon. Because this, you can see the fingers. If I had a better camera again, you can see the fingers. We have the feet. You can still make out toes because this isn't going to obscure those details. And we were careful that we didn't cover them up with our prior coats of paint. Other places we can put Seraphim Sepia. So anytime you want a richer, warm color, you can use this. So our canvas bag, we want to make this a little warmer. So I'm going to take that canvas and I'm going to put sepia so it will seep into these recesses. And that is going to add a layer of depth that we didn't have before. I'm even going to take this and I'm going to run it across the straps that are holding this bedroll on. And it will not be incredibly visible, but it is there. So that gives us a tone. You know what? We're going to do his shirt like this too. The shirt is already lighter than the cloak, and we're actually going to make the cloak a little darker. So we're just going to go ahead and give him a brown shirt. And a lot of this is dependent on the color underneath the shade. So we had lightened this all the way up to white, and that's going to give us this kind of tan color. When we had a brown, it's going to give us a richer brown. We had this canvas, it's going to enrich that. The one real drawback with these washes is they are slow to dry. So we're going to give it a few minutes. We're going to come back. What we have left here, we have the metals, we have the hair, and then we have final details. So that should be pretty quick. All right, now let's do these metallics. Again, I've got cheap paints. Here we're going for folk art because their metallics are a little better than apple barrel. And we're going to start with this gunmetal color. Gunmetal gray. That's going to give us our deep iron or steel base color. Still 10-0 brush. Take it across here. So our metal bits are going to become metallic colored. We have a few metal bits on the back, and I like these to look iron. So with these, because you already have that dark gray color, we're just going to kind of highlight the edges where it looks worn without really going into deep color in the pot. That's the extent of our metals. Now I could take it and we can highlight the hilt a little bit where he's holding it. So we have metallic color there. We're going to highlight that one more time with that silver I showed you. But before we do that, we're going to hit the first coat on his hair, which is going to be this Averland Sunset. I love this color too. This is a great deep yellow color. You can tell I treat my pots where the lids just fall off. Again, 10-0 brush. I just cleaned it. We're going to take this and we're going to cover this area with Averland Sunset to give our yellow hair some yellow. All right, now I'm still not getting, I've covered more of the insides of this, but we still have a little bit of texture there. It's not total hair helmet quite yet. But we've got our yellow, and now we're going to finish that big cloak. And for that, I'm going to take one more special trick. I can find it on this. Yep. This is a contrast paint. This is similar to that wash or that ink that we used with the Seraphim Sepia. So very similar to that, but it's thicker. And it's really meant to not get as deep in recesses, but to discolor what it goes over. So all I'm going to do with this, I've already done my highlight, but I'm going to run this all the way down his cloak. And this is going to really bring out the natural tones and make it a lot more brown. So you see, doing this, it's becoming a richer type of lived-in leather. It's something where he's had this cloak for a while. He's been out wandering around Middle Earth. It's seen some business. And so we want to reflect that by these different tones within the leather of his cloak. And that makes our cloak finished. All that highlighting we did before is still highlighted. It just happens to have this kind of chestnut color over it, which is really nice. So we're going to finish this, and we'll have one more step when I come back. All right, final steps, and this is where we're really going to make it look awesome. All right, so the first thing, I have another contrast color. This is Ayendan Yellow. Just like the snakebite leather that we just used, this is going to pigment what is below it. So we're going to take our bright yellow hair and we're going to kind of dull it up a bit. And we're going to let this color permeate into his hair, which is going to give us kind of a rosy blonde color. It's definitely not toe-headed, but we have a little bit of, maybe a little bit of ginger here. Strawberry blonde looks perfect to me. We're done with this paint. Second highlight color we need is our silver, which is that really cheap sterling silver. We're going to apply this very, very sparingly on his blade. Just kind of the sharp edges. There you go. Now those sharp edges kind of stand out a little bit. I'm not going to really do it to his pot because I always consider that to be like wrought iron, but I will the ladle. The ladle's a little more specialized tool. Will give a little bit of additional highlight to the ladle. Now this is done. For all intents and purposes, this model is fine to put on a tabletop, to bring to your D&D game, to do whatever you're looking for there. But there's one extra finishing touch that I'm going to show you as soon as this is dried. I said before that Seraphim Sepia is talent in a bottle, and its cousin is Nuln Oil, a shade I've used for a very long time. I've spilled more of this than I can even begin to tell you. But like that Seraphim Sepia, it is a runny color, but it is dark. And with this, we're going to add a special edge to this model that's really going to make it pop. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate materials. I'm going to run a little bead of this down between the bedroll, around his ladle, between the ladle and the backpack. A little more here. We're going to do between the backpack and the bedroll. We're going to separate all of our materials. We're just running a tiny little line that is really going to help those different sections. You can even do it within the backpack where you're separating the different pouches. They're modeled on there. We might as well highlight them. And we can do that to separate the cloak from the front. So we can really start to put that edge highlight to show the difference between his cloak, his pants, and his shirt. And this can be done sparingly. You don't have to really go crazy with the Nuln Oil, but what it does is it adds a depth that to do by hand is far beyond my capability. And I probably should have said this at the beginning. I am not any kind of world-class painter. I know a bunch of tricks so that I can make models look good quickly. there are much better teachers if you want something that is amazing and real centerpiece type stuff. That's not me. I'm actually going to Nuln Oil his shirt here because it's kind of in shadow. And so now we have a painted figure. He is nice. I don't think I... And with that, we're done. I wish my camera were better. He looks a lot better in person. But minimal metallics, no black other than that Nuln Oil that seeped down into areas. And the palette that we have used is this. These are all the paints that we used. I've used a grand total of 3 brushes. None of this is expensive. This is the Citadel stuff runs, it's a little pricey, but all the Apple Barrel stuff is super cheap. My brushes are cheap. My base coat was just matte black. It doesn't have to be super expensive. If all you're looking for is to get a figure ready for your game, that's what we've done. And it looks good. Now, we can always work on the base once I decide the whole fellowship, and we can get them all in the same color of base just by running usually pavement with some highlight or something to get the bases so they look like he's walking on dungeon or forest or something. Or I can just paint it black and we can just have this disc for him. Now you'll see a little highlight in the video where that Nuln Oil is still drying. We're going to have to give that a little while. But he's done. We're ready to go. Our version of Samwise is ready to rock. And that's that.